Debbie.
Hey, hello, Nicole. How are you?
Good. How are you, John?
Not bad, not bad. Thank you so much for joining us on Wentworth Unlocked and joining us online. We didn't have a Wentworth Unlocked last week because things were rather busy at Screen Star events as we were making all sorts of arrangements for the exciting announcement of the weekend. You're coming to visit us in the UK.
Yeah, I can't wait. I can't wait. It's very exciting to finally be able to head over there.
Yeah, absolutely. People have been asking for you to come over for so long, so it's really exciting to have you with us in person. Is this your first time in the UK? Or will it be your first time in the UK?
No, it won't. I've been to the UK a few times before. It's to be honest, it's one of my favorite places. I spent a bit of time in London. I did some courses over there, watched some great theatre. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, have you been Googling what's on in the West End?
I haven't yet because I think I'm there for such a brief amount of time. I'm hoping I can have a little look see, but we'll see. Yeah.
Well, of course, last time that we saw you at a Screen Star event was 2 years ago in Melbourne, literally weeks before the borders closed. We always say we were so lucky we could still be there now. We could be stuck in Melbourne as well.
Exactly. It was literally on that cusp because I remember when I was heading down to Melbourne, there were all these talks about this virus out of Wuhan and, what does this mean for the rest of the world? And I remember after the event, which I had such a great time at, I grabbed some dinner with a friend afterwards and we were discussing, the fact that all these people had come over and it was super exciting. But I mentioned, but there's this kind of virus out of Wuhan, so who knows how the world's going to go. And my friend turned around to me and went, "Nothing's going to happen. What are you worried about?" And literally next week, it was like world shuts down for too many years. To be honest, it's nice that we're opening back up again. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And great international flights are back on, so you can join us. So we obviously didn't scare you off in Melbourne then, as you've agreed to come and do something else with us.
No, I have to say I had a very lovely time in Melbourne with your fine selves and with all the fans that came along. So it was so nice that we could make this one happen.
So obviously the focus of Wentworth Unlocked is to look at each episode in order and discuss the sort of what happened in the background. So we're now on episode 3 of our epic journey through 100.
Nice,
and,
nice.
It's so great that you can join us for this episode, not only because it's a bit of a teaser for the forthcoming live event next month, but also this is a very Franky-centric episode, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean it's the setup episode. So in that first season, we had all the setup episodes for each of the individual characters. So I think it went B, and then Doreen, and then Franky, and then Lizzie, and so on and so on and so on. So this is where you really get that look into who she is and how she got into Wentworth and why she's there and what really drives her. And it was great to have those episodes early on in the piece so that we could really, really form and solidify who the characters were and what they were about.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many strong scenes to talk about. You just mentioned the sort of the background, so I will start talking about one of the flashbacks. Actually, of course, the opening where you get to see the attack that Franky executes live on screen on reality television. How was
Watch
that
out,
to film?
Ton. I know we're not in physical contact, but we are live on screen, mate.
There you go.
Yeah, so that's so Frankie's on a reality cooking show, and as you can see, she's not very happy with the host, played by the lovely Paul McDermott, who came out. Yeah, she gets a bee under her bonnet, as Frankie does, and ends up throwing hot oil all over the poor guy. She's got some anger, some temper issues at the beginning there. So yeah, that's what landed her at Wentworth.
Well, they're obviously in studio, never going to allow you to sling hot oil around or at anybody. What were you actually throwing there?
I can't. I mean, we're talking 10 years ago now. I wish, you know what I mean? I only made that realization while I was in overseas actually, and I was like, oh my god, yeah, that like this was all 10 years ago. It's in a way it seems like yesterday, in a way it seems like so far away. But I think for the most part, so what happens when you shoot a scene like that is gonna completely require a complete change in another character is you'll shoot and reshoot the moment up until the splashdown. So we would have done that numerous times, and then I think for the most part it would have been my throwing water from memory, and then they may have had a reverse shot if they needed to see a little more texture and color in the water that was more akin to oil, then we would have swapped it out at the last minute.
I think it's really interesting, actually, especially for a show that doesn't pull back on the violence. You don't actually see the results. In your mind, you do. When I watched it the other night, I thought, oh, yeah, you see this guy. You don't. You actually just see him on the floor covering his face.
But then in later seasons, when Panisi comes back, played by Felix Williamson, a different actor, did you see the ramifications of that moment? Like, I can't remember. From memory, he was a little disfigured.
Yeah, very much so. You see the scarring, the sort of
the
Freddy Krueger style scarring going on.
I mean,
it's weird. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting to think about what that would have done. I feel like Frankie always was riding the line between people being able to empathize with her and the brutality and the violence she did inflict on people. So I wonder what that would have done to everyone's perception of her if you had have seen the level of damage that she would have inflicted on Panisi. I do wonder about that. And maybe that was a choice at the time from the director that I wasn't aware of,
Yeah, that's really interesting, actually. That makes perfect sense. I can imagine that discussion taking place in the writer's room and with the director.
Yeah. So that discussion actually came. Am I allowed to do spoilers here? Yeah, spoilers? Surely, right?
Yeah.
Like, so the big season 1 moment at the end where we discover Meg, the governor, has been killed. There was this whole palaver about who's done it, and not like the actors didn't know who it was that was the culprit. And when we were discussing, like when it was revealed that it was Frankie who killed her, in the initial scripts, I think it was quite brutal and it was quite intentional that she did that. And when we realized that would then reflect on Frankie quite badly, and how do you bring back an audience to a character when they've done something in cold blood? So that's when the director of those episodes said, I think it should be more in hot blood and as a reaction and a kind of accident. Like, she didn't go in to kill her. She was kind of taken off guard and bang, it happened. So we were always riding that line with Frankie of how bad can she be and how brutal can she be while never losing that kind of relationship and that empathy towards her. It was tough. It was a hard line to ride sometimes.
It's certainly a balance that you and the directors and writers achieved brilliantly, because Frankie is so adored by the fans.
Yeah. I mean,
and
sometimes I have people saying, Frankie's pretty rough. I don't really like her. Fair enough.
yeah. So,
but yeah, that was something I was always looking for too, was those moments that weren't scripted, that sat outside of the dialogue, that I could then show her humanity. So it was in, the high-fiving of the little kid, or having Frankie do hideous things that were scripted, but then finding a moment just after the fact where she felt pretty bad about herself for doing so, so that you always had a hook into who she was, because otherwise you'd be right in thinking she was a monster.
yeah, it's interesting. Just there are so many scenes where you do see Frankie sort of, when no one's around, reflecting in a way on what she's had to do. You see the opposite in a scene early in episode 3, where it looks as though Jax is going to retaliate on B with the steam press, and you see Frankie brace herself out of the door and then go in with the swagger, as Jax would put it. And that preempted, of course, a very important scene where Frankie is the first person in Wentworth to be on the receiving end of the steam press. How was that to do?
I mean, it's always a bit of fun and games. I think particularly in that first season, I loved those showdowns with Jax, I have to say. Chris McQuaid is such a fierce woman and a superbly talented actor. So whenever we got to play, I quite enjoyed that. And in that first season, I think we were dealing with, a new world and a new tone of show for anything that any of us had ever done before. So it was kind of fun. I know that sounds weird, but it was kind of fun doing that extreme, violent stuff, particularly around the steam press, because we knew how iconic it was as well.
So I gather this episode contains one of your favorite scenes as Frank, when she finally meets her father in the visiting room.
Yeah. I just think it's one of my favorite scenes, because I think it gets to the core of who Frankie is really quickly, super efficiently, and kind of just sums up her armor.
Yeah.
And it sums up her vulnerability all in one scene. It shows you where she's coming from and how and why she operates. So that scene has always been key to me. That was one of my audition scenes. And for me, it was always the way I would access her. It was where a lot of questions about Frankie were answered, and what provided the foundations going forward for another, pretty much 6 seasons.
I know this is maybe unfairly trying to take you back for 10 years to the audition, but did the scene change considerably from the audition process to what appeared on screen?
No,
Really?
not much at all. I mean, I'm sure that there were, slight tweaks here and there, but yeah, it was pretty much the same from the audition.
And what's great about it is, initially, it's that silence, really, and just the glower and the tension building and building until she just loses it. How did you prepare for that thing?
I don't know. Is it interesting for people to hear about how an actor prepares? Like, obviously, I'm an acting nerd, and I could talk about it all day. But for me, the key was to, like, I already had a lot of that, like a lot of the kind of external bits in place, right? Like the the swagger was in place, the costume was in place, the tattoos were in place, the hair, like all those external factors were established. And for me, it was connecting to what she needed from her dad and why. And I think that once I found that, which was universal in essence, once I found that, then I was able to just let rip, because I think for any of us who, perhaps have broken families, or even if we don't, if we have that kind of parent-child relationship, is, whether we like to admit it or not, is so key to so many of us. You know, as a parent myself, you have moments where you're like, am I giving my kid enough? Like, am I there enough for them? Am I present enough? And whether that's in a very small form or in a very big form, like with Frankie, where she had major abandonment issues, there was abuse involved. Wherever on the sliding scale you tap in, I think we all, at the end of the day, want to be seen, and we need to be seen and loved by our parent figures, because, I mean, if they don't see us, who does? That those are our first formative relationships. So for me, it was about tapping into that and really kind of relating to that. And once I did, I got her. We all want to be seen. We all want to be loved.
I'm going to go in a very different direction with Sarah's question here at the bottom of the screen. She says,
Yeah.
How long did the tattoos take and how long did they stay on for?
Yeah, so we got better and better at the tattoo process. So they were all transfers, like those kind of, here on Australia Day or whatever, you get these like transfer tattoos and you pop them on. So they're a kind of sophisticated version of that. So the process got quicker and quicker, but I think in the end, Frankie had how many tattoos? And then she got more. She got like a whole other sleeve as the show went on. So it was a good couple of hours. It took a good couple of hours to do the whole thing. There we go. There's the sleeve. To put all the tats on, do the hair, do the costume, and so forth. And in the first season, I actually kept them on the whole time. So I would go home and shower in a particular way, dry myself in a particular way. I wouldn't wear like seatbelts. I had to be very mindful of because of the chest tattoo, handbags, like anything that would rub in a certain way, I tried to avoid. So for that first season, I pretty much had them on the whole time. And then we just kind of, if I came back over the weekend and parts had rubbed off, we'd fill it in and then redo as we had to go. But that was a great exercise in being heavily tattooed for a good 4 months of my life. It was really great to see the difference between how people treated me. Because at the time, tattoos weren't, they were kind of just becoming hip, but tattoos, kind of gave people a certain impression of you. So I noticed the difference of how I was treated when I had tattoos on and how I was treated when I didn't. It was.
How did that work?
Well, I distinctly remember like going to my local cafe and grabbing a coffee, and I was kind of like new in that area at the time. And, the first time I went in, solo tattoos, I was like, hi, how you going? Super friendly. And then the next time when I went in and I was like all tattooed up, I just remember there being a bit of like hesitation, like, oh, hi, yep. I mean, she could have been just having a bad day. I don't know. But there was definitely a different receiving of who I was. Yeah. And I also had another person who didn't know me and met me with tattoos on and make bold, sweeping statements about who I was and what my relationship to my body was. And I was like, whoa. Okay, at this point, that reveals more about you than it does about me because, hey, buddy, these are fake.
And I take it you told them that or did you?
Oh, absolutely, I did. Yeah, I was like, yeah. I let him dig the hole as much as
Yeah,
possible. Like, I let him just kind of, like, dig
but
himself a nice big hole, and then I went, "I'm an actor and they're fake, well done." Yeah, that was funny.
well done, you.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I'm just gonna go back to something you talked about earlier. We were discussing Franky's abandonment issues, and of course, in the flashback to that episode, we get to see some clips of the younger Franky on the night the father leaves. Did you have anything to do with the younger actress playing the role?
Unfortunately not. It was filmed in a whole different location on a whole different day, to my being there. So I don't think I even got to meet the lovely young
No.
Frankie, who I'm sure is, like, in her mid-20s now or something.
Yeah, she'd have been about 10 then, so yeah, she'd be
Yeah.
early 20s now.
Yeah,
Anyway,
yeah, I would
we'll
I
have to
would
get
love.
her on Wentworth Unlocked one evening.
Pardon?
We'll have to get him on Wentworth Unlocked for a chat.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, so I had very, little to do with that. Obviously, I was super curious, when they were throwing around, options and headshots and photos. I was like, "Oh, who is it?" And, yeah. Yeah, I actually love working with kids on set. I think it's great fun. They're so honest and they're so real. So there's no acting required really. You kind of have to get in there and engage with them, in a very real way. So yeah.
Well, I know that it's Kaya, isn't it? She doesn't feature in episode 3, mainly the first 2 episodes. But how was it having such a young child on set in those early days of filming?
Well, it was really great actually, and that kind of speaks to the moment I was talking about before, like finding those moments where, Frankie is walking past and gives Kaya a little high five, and kind of physicalizing that relationship that would be in place because she has lived in the prison since birth essentially. So knowing that, these are her family and her aunties who are around her, and have that kind of that relationship.
And just staying with the relationship of Frankie's inner child and father, we get to see probably Frankie at her most vulnerable towards the end of the episode, where she just says, "I want my dad." After being
Yeah.
what,
Yeah.
what do you think then led from that moment to her ultimate total rejection of
Well, 'cause she's an injured child. She's completely injured, and she knows that. I think in that moment, she knows that she can't in Wentworth, the world of Wentworth, you can't afford to be vulnerable,
yeah.
and that's where her vulnerability lies. So she's gotta reject him in order to build that armor back up so that she knows she can survive. It's survival.
Right. Just going back to the previous scene with Frankie's father in the visiting booth, all the dramas have hopefully have scenes like that sort of confrontation. But how was it acting the scene with that literally other barrier of having the glass partition between you, separating you?
Well, I think you see it. I got cranky, didn't I? And I smashed the glass as hard as I could because it was just getting in the way. It was getting in the way of me being able to connect with him and lash out at him where I needed to lash out. It was probably good in a way because who knows what I/Frankie would have done had there not been glass. It provided a great obstacle for the scene, I think.
And we talked about how we've touched on how you prepare for scenes like that, but how do you come down afterwards? How do you relax once you've done something like that?
Oh, John, to be honest, I don't even know. I'm not sure I wound down or um, kind of switched off in that whole first season. Um, I say this a little bit. I think my family and my loved ones who are around me are probably best to answer that question because for me it's a process, right? And when you're shooting a show, it's like you've got those scenes and you do them and you're there, but you know that you have to get up the next day and do more of it. So I'm not sure in the arc of shooting a season of television, particularly like Wentworth, that there are any come down moments. Like if there was ever any kind of, I mean, there was, on Wentworth, there were times when it was hard to detach from the brutality of what you had either been through or inflicted that day. And that's where the friendships between castmates came into play, because we were all experiencing the same thing at the same time, and we were a support network for each other. Yeah. But I think for me, there weren't many moments to take a breath throughout the run of a season, and there were those conversations with castmates, but it wasn't till the end of the season that you kind of went, okay, and then you'd kind of finish shooting. I go into like a hibernation thing, and then 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, I come out and I'm like, who am I again? Okay, I've got to find who Nick is again, and that would usually involve cutting and dyeing my hair. I always felt like that was a big refresh.
Well, in episode 3, the other aspect of Franky that we got to see was her flirtation with Erica.
Yeah.
What do you think the mutual attraction was between these two very, very different characters?
I think they were both super damaged, to be honest. I think they're, clearly they had a kind of innate animalistic sexual chemistry. But I also think they related to each other on a level of damage and denial that I found really, really interesting. And for Franky, who, as we know, like has that damage from a child having been abused and abandoned, that Franky was actually looking for someone who held a high position of power, like Erica, to see her. And I think in Franky's mind, if she could get Erica to love her, be with her, validate her, and Franky would have died happy at that point. She was super, super unevolved and kind of wasn't willing to do the work on herself. But for Franky, it was an end goal, I think. She was like, well, if I can get Erica, the governor, to kind of get down and dirty with me, then I've made it.
Aim for the top.
Exactly. Go for the top. And I think Franky always had high ideals and higher aspirations for herself. So for her, the other women in the prison were kind of fodder almost, whereas Erica was like, seemed to be something more for Franky. It was a status thing. I'd say it was a status thing.
Well, Nicole, we've actually come to the end of our time for now, because of course on the 21st and 22nd of May, you'll be here in the UK, in Birmingham, and then London, to carry on this chat and chat to the audience and fans in person, live on stage.
Bring it on! I can't wait. I hope to see everyone there.
Looking forward to seeing you.
Thanks, John.
But this time, when we're on stage, you're not allowed to make me blush.
Oh no, I'm going for the world record now.
Oh no, it's too easy to do. Being a ginger, it's too easy. No, I think I'm going now, actually.
I think you are.
Oh well, I've lost already.
Yes. 2-0. 2-0.
Oh, brilliant. Well, thanks so much. And I really look forward to seeing you next month.
Can't wait.
Take care. Well, that was brilliant. But before we go, just want to have a word about a few minor changes with Wentworth Unlocked. Because of the change in time with with clocks changing here in the UK, and it means it's been quite difficult to coordinate Australia and UK. So we're changing the day and time. So we're now going to be on Sundays or at midday UK time, whatever that may be in your part of the world. So we'll see you on episode 4 of Wentworth Unlocked on Sunday, the 24th of April. See you all there.